Hello and welcome to Roni Programs. Today we're going to be doing a little bit more refactoring work, and I want to take a second to acknowledge the fact that this series is more than just building Pokemon Red in React. This series is about coming to explore software design and to grow software design and make improvements along the way so that working within this code base is a real pleasure, and it's intuitive, and all of our components are easy to use, all these kinds of things. So today I want to talk about our menu API. As a consumer of the menu API, I am dissatisfied with how I have to use the menu. I have to pass this options object, which is an array that contains an ID and a label. I don't really even need the ID, I just have to pass it so that I can provide a unique React key. We initially thought maybe the label could be an arbitrary node, so we couldn't use the label as a key. We're going to rethink this API in the face of some observations about React and about the Pokemon game. So the first thing I want to call out is that I think it was not a good idea to allow a label to be an arbitrary node. In the Pokemon, especially Pokemon Red, the menus are super simple. Text is just text. So with that respect, we can use something like the label as the ID, thus making a separate ID redundant. It's really not serving us. We're sort of having to create an ID for every single option. Not a great API, not fun to use. The second thing is passing this options array just feels so ugly. There is another way to pass information in React, and that is a way that is very often overlooked. We go to props. Props are great, but I want to rethink the way that we can actually use a menu. And so what I want to do today is I want to write a menu2, which we're first going to, kind of sketch out the API design. We're going to write tests against it. We're going to implement it, and then we're going to replace all the instances where we're calling menu with this menu2, and then eventually we'll deprecate menu and rename menu2 to be menu. So there's a lot on our plate today, but let's jump in. The first thing I want to do is create a test file for menu2, and and create an implementation file for menu2. So we could just do it in the same file as menu, but let's stick with this for now. We're going to copy this, but we're not going to keep hardly any of this. We're just going to, I guess, just really keep the React imports, because we're going to rethink this component entirely, calling it menu2. There we go. And we'll return a stub for now. Menu2 stub. Great, so we have menu2. What does menu2 look like? Oh, and of course, let's pull up our tests. So what is this gonna look like? Well, when I render menu2, I don't want to pass this ugly options array. I'd rather do something like this. I'd rather render menu2, and instead of passing props, I want to pass children. So I want to pass something like a menu item, which is going to come from menu. Actually, it's going to come from menu2. Can we import this? It's not picking it up yet. Menu2. And we're going to import menu item. It doesn't exist yet, but that's okay. And menu item is going to take the label of the thing we want to render. So we're going to render an item foo and an item bar. And menu item is also going to take a prop on select. And so when this menu item is selected, we're going to run this callback. Okay, so I want to just take a second to look at this, right? Keep this in your mind versus this. Personally, I would so much rather use something like this. The reason why is it enables me to do things like I can hide menu items. Let's say like is bar visible. I can hide menu items in the way that I would hide other React components. It just creates a little bit more flexibility. If I were to try to do that with this options array here, I'd have to like create an option with like the defaults, and then, oh, if this isn't hidden, I'm going to push that. So overall, I think this is a much cleaner design. So, and implementing it, of course, it's a little bit tricky because we're not used to thinking about manipulating React children, but I think you'll see it's not super difficult. So let's go test by test and get this thing passing, shall we? So first of all, let's go ahead and, we don't need that anymore. Let's go ahead and look at our first test. So we want to have the first option selected by default. So the first thing we should probably do is define what a menu item is, because right now we're getting an error here because menu item doesn't exist. So let's also export a menu item, and we can return menu item stub. Great. So we have our menu2 stub rendered. At this point, let's just stage what we have. And now what we want to do is render the options that were provided to us. Okay, so this is a function component. We don't need these empty objects right here. So this is a function component. So we know that it's going to take children, but it's funny as I just remove it. For menu 2, we want to, let's not worry about that. We don't want to get too in the weeds. So we know that a menu 2 is going to take menu items. That's the sort of expected use of this API. So what we can do is return something like an unordered list, and we can map react.children.map over all the children provided to us. And for each child, we're going to render, let's call it a selectable menu item. And what is a selectable menu item? Well, it's kind of like a menu item, but it's going to be sort of private to, it's an implementation detail. And this is what's going to sort of actually render the list item that we care about. And it's going to show that little bullet point, the cursor, if you will, if the item is selected. So for now, let's just return a stub, selectable menu item stub. And we can, say is selected true. So now we're mapping every menu item that's passed as this selectable menu item. So let's see what we got so far in our output. We're rendering a menu item stub. We want to render an option. So the first thing let's do is we'll render a list item with the role of, option. Of course, we're going to need to pass the aria selected when we have a role option, and we'll take the is selected prop here. Okay, this is good so far. So now it's finding the options, but what it's not finding is the options with the correct name. So it wants to find foo, for example, but it's not finding it. So how do we pass that information? Well, first of all, let's stage. But what is a menu item? Well, a menu item takes a very specific child here, and that's going to be React text. So a React text is a string or a number. We'll allow for numbers. We probably won't use them. At least I don't think we will. Maybe we will. But it's basically saying this has to be a string or a number. And what's good about that is we can pass that as a key when we render these menu items. If we guarantee that a menu item can only contain a string or a number as children. So here, first of all, let's render the children in the menu item. You'll see actually that we won't really use this menu item component. It's not really going to do anything because we're going to map it to a different component, right? So this is just kind of this is our higher level API, and the menu2 is taking care of rendering the selectable menu item with the cursor and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. So we've got a menu item, and as I said, we want to show the correct label here. So one thing we can do is we can say, render a selectable menu item, and in it, I want to render the child dot props dot children, and we'll address this type error in a second. But let's talk about this for a second. A child is a menu item, right? So because the menu2 will only render menu items. So if a child is a menu item, child props children is this right here. It's the React text, the string or the number that's going to be used as a key. What's good about this? Well, we can actually let's create a variable out of this, and we can call this label. We'll pass the label to the selectable menu item, and we can use the label as the key. So this is great. We're getting, what are we getting here? So we're getting a list. We're not returning this. Okay. Let's return the selectable menu item. Okay, cool. So now you'll notice actually the last thing we need to do is here in the selectable menu item, we also want to say that we're going to receive children. I actually don't think the typing of the children is as important, so let's skip it for now if we don't absolutely need to define it. We do need to define it here so that we can pass the key correctly. I think if we remove this, is it going to complain? Well, it doesn't know what label is, so let's keep it for now. We can try to remove it later, see what happens. So now we've got options foo and options bar, and the test is failing because it says, hey, I think bar should not be selected, but it's telling me it is. So let's go into our menu component real quick. We had some functionality around the cursor. We're going to bring this into menu2 because we're going to use the same functionality. So let's create this use cursor, and instead of a list of options, this is going to be, how do we type this? Let's create a type for this. We're going to call this menu item instance. And this is a React element with that has props of a menu item. Something like that. Cool. And remember our use cursor would call this onSelect item when whenever the cursor was hovered over the menu item at that index and the A button was pressed. So let's provide an onSelect prop, and it's not going to be used within the component itself. It's just going to be available so that use cursor can call it. So let's see what's going on here. So options cursor dot props dot onSelect. Wonderful. And now we're going to actually use the cursor. So let's do cursor equals use cursor. and we're going to be passing the children as the list of options. So it's going to tell us that React node is not assignable. We'll deal with the type errors in a second. And then here, we're going to get the ith, the index of the child being rendered. And isSelected is no longer true, but it's if the cursor, actually we have a utility function for this because we don't return cursor. It's is cursor at position I. Did I do something silly? I did. I did something silly. There we go. Okay, our test is passing. We've got a couple type errors. Let's go ahead and clean this up. But first of all, let's just acknowledge what we did. We created an API that allows us to render menus like this. And I think this is a pretty worthy achievement. So that's great. The first thing we need to do is address this, we can address this one first. So let's go ahead and create a helper method. Something like is menu item instance. That's going to take a React node, and it's going to return whether or not the child is a menu item instance. So this is a type guard, which means if this function returns true, it's going to treat child as menu item instance. Menu item instance has props, is selected, children, is selected, no, not is selected, children and on select, which we can, then use in turn. So let's do this. So the child is a menu item instance if we say return React dot is valid element. That's going to let us know if it's a valid node. And child dot type is menu item. So what's this going to do for us? Well, now what we can do is say just thinking about this for a minute, and we can clean up like how this logic happens, but let's do this for now. We can say if not is menu item instance. We can do something, like log a warning, rendered something other than menu item inside menu. And we'll say menu here because we plan on renaming it. So rendered something other than menu item inside menu. Oh, and then we have to return. And now you can see it's going to treat child as a menu item instance. Child has props, and of those props we have on select and children. Cool. Now the last thing we have to sort of deal with type-wise is this right here. So I'm trying to think of what would be the best way to handle this. We could just force the type conversion. I have a better idea though. We can say this is a array of, no, I guess we can't do that. Wait. Just thinking. I think we can do that. But let's call it I have to think about that one. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to think about what the most elegant way to do that would be. And this is, it's an implementation detail. It's something we don't have to worry about outside of this file. So I think this is fine. Remember, our goal is to provide an elegant API for the users of menu 2. So we'll just force the type conversion for now. We have a warning if they try to render something other than a menu item, so I think this is fine for now. Let's stage that. This is great. We've still got passing tests. Let's jump into the next part. So scrolls up and down through the list of options. Let's go ahead and work on this test. Okay, so the first, let's get rid of some of this noise here. So the first place we are running into issues is after I hit the down key, it expects foo to be not selected. And we don't have any of the handling logic yet for dealing with the key events. So in our original menu implementation, we wrapped everything in a controller listener. So why don't we go ahead and wrap in a controller listener, and we'll just go kind of, one thing at a time. In true TDD style, we would take out the priority and then reintroduce it when we had failing tests, but we're basically kind of doing a rework of this API, and we know that code works, so we'll leave it for now. But let's handle the down press for now. I mean, I'm debating. We know this code works. I don't think it's worth our time to prove like step by step that we're doing things correctly. Let's go ahead and not add the on dismiss yet though. Let's save that for later. But let's make sure that the up down, yep, and then we can also have this test to make sure that the correct option is pressed when the A button is pressed. Great. The last thing we want to do is our original menu did have that on dismiss callback, which I think was optional. Pretty sure it was optional. I don't necessarily think. Let me rephrase that. I think it's possible that there could be a better design here than having the menu know that it's being dismissed, because not all menus are dismissible with B and start. But I think for now, this is okay. So we're gonna do on B press is on dismiss, and then also on start press. Cool. So at this point, let's be clear, the menu component has more code than it originally did, right? Like a side-by-side comparison. But the benefit we gain is that the API is super simple now. Like, to me, it's not only simpler, it's cleaner, it's more flexible, like I demonstrated with like how we can hide elements this way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start replacing instances of menu with menu 2. And we'll make sure that all our other tests still pass. So let's jump into any code that uses menu. So the main menu, that's a great place to start. Here, we're going to render not menu, but menu 2. And we're going to be rendering a menu item of new game on select on new game. Again, I just want to take a moment to appreciate this code. We can even look at the diff, right? So this sort of ugly mess versus this. I think this is just a lot more elegant. There's no redundant information. It reads a lot better. This is good. And so actually, so we have a failing test. So this has done something wrong. Somehow our menu 2 is doing something a little bit different than menu 1. And so expected document not to contain element found selected true, roll option instead. So that's in the app test. And that's happening, what, here? So the new game sequence is initialized. We hit A to go to the start menu. Sorry for the ambulance coming by right now. Got the window open too. We're at the main menu. We hit A to select new game, and we expect that the menu is not there anymore, but it's still finding the menu. Why might that be? Why might that be? Is it because on select is not actually getting triggered? Let's debug. Let's figure out what's calling this. Let's see. New game. Callback. Let's see if this is getting fired. Okay, it's not. So that means that for some reason, the on select is not getting called. So why might that be? Let's jump into menu 2 and figure that out. We do have a test for that, don't we? We have a test to selects the current option when the A button is pressed. Yes, we do. So why might it not be working? Maybe we have our types wrong here somewhere. So let's see. So let's debug. Selecting at cursor, and let's see what the options cursor dot props looks like. Okay, so it's saying, so what it's saying is that, or rather what this means is that the list of options is not what we think it is. Oh, I think I understand what the problem is. It's because we can't just access the options like an array. It's what it really is a set of children, and there's a special API for that, and that's react.children.toArray, something like that. From here we can get the cursor position, cursor .props.onSelect, but of course the problem here is that we have a typing issue. So maybe what we could do is we could say this is the selected menu item, and then if is menu item instance selected menu item, we can call selected menu item dot menu item dot props dot on select. Do something like that. Okay, let's see what that does for us. Okay, yeah, easy mistake to make. That actually means that we might be able to clean this up now. So we can call this a this can just be React nodes. Here again, we can do react.children.count options, something like that. And up here, we no longer need to force this type conversion. Yeah, this is good. And let's just be perfectly explicit. Let's say that yes, these are children. Awesome. And now we have our main menu using menu 2. So let's see what else is using menu. Well, the menu test, that's fine. New game. So, okay, cool. So instead of using a menu here, let's return menu 2. And then what do we want to do? Well, we want to map the list of names. So we can do names.map, takes a name. What is it going to return? It's going to return a menu item. You can see why I definitely prefer this. I hope you can see why I definitely prefer this approach now. There we go. Because you can do things like map an object to a set of React nodes. I think this API in the long run is just going to be a lot cleaner. And then on select, we can do on name select name, something like that. Just pass an anonymous callback. Oh, we need a key, which can just be the name, of course. We don't need this junk anymore. And that, yeah, that's looking, I think that's just looking a lot nicer. I think there's one more place, the overworld menu. Yes, ooh, yeah, this, this is ugly, huh? Yeah, so let's see what we can do here. I think eventually we're going to render these all like item by item and not do this like mapping thing, because they all have different on select functionality. So yeah, let's use our new menu 2 API. So maybe I'll just do it up here. So return menu 2. We do have an on dismiss, so let's pass that. And the first menu item is going to be item, all caps, on select. I think let's just do ourselves a favor and make on select optional for now. That does mean that we have to conditionally call on select, but that's fine. Because like, especially when we're sketching out skeletons, we're not going to have functionality yet, and it's stupid to pass these callbacks when they're not being used yet. So until we need them, let's do that. The next thing is the player name. We have a few more menu items after that. We have save, we have option, and we have exit. And here we do have an on select, and that's going to be on dismiss. So let's save this, fingers crossed, hope all of our tests pass. Wonderful. I really do hope like folks are as excited as I am about this. I think this looks fantastic. I think this is an example of a significantly better design than what we had before. Let's go ahead now and clean up this sort of junk that we don't need anymore. So the first thing is I'm just gonna see if we're importing anywhere from menu. So we are here, but we don't need to. And just the menu test. So the first thing we'll do is delete the menu test. Good. Now we can safely delete the menu file. I think the next thing we should do is rename the menu test because nothing depends on that. At least I don't believe it does. And the final, well, we have to do two more things. One is call this menu. We are going to, yes, automatically update imports and save all. Make sure everything's still working. Good. We could have staged a couple times where we were doing those changes, but that's fine. And then the very, very last thing is call this, whoops, menu, save all. Okay, so let's just kind of take a look at what we've got here. Now we've got a really nice menu API that renders menu items. We're using it in a few new places. Yep, so here and in the overworld menu as well. Our menu component, let's kind of see what's changed. So we no longer have the options, the explicit options prop that's just passed as children. The cursor functionality is the same. The controller listener functionality is the same. So what's different is how we're mapping the children to, to a menu item. And we created a menu item that also, a menu item and a selectable menu item, and a little bit of the cursor logic changed because we're no longer accepting options array. We're accepting a list of children. Cool. So maybe let's just do one more thing while we're here. And let's see if there's a way to kind of clean up this bit. So I'm thinking about whether it makes sense to have an intermediate component that handles something like this. For example, that takes, I don't know how that would look actually. We could call it like a menu item guard or something like that. And it would take a label prop. It would take is selected. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It's tricky because we're doing this mapping. We don't necessarily have to do this mapping inside of here though. Like one thing we could do is have let's do something like this. We can do menu items, and then let's just copy and paste this for a second. So we can take the menu items and map I guess if you render anything besides a menu item, we should just return like a fragment with, I don't know. Maybe we should just return nothing there because we don't support this. Say this is unsupported. Something like that, just to let us know. And then, yeah, maybe from here we can just return something like the label, and then is selected, something like that. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's even, for my OCD's sake, swap that around. So now we have a sort of set of menu items that's a little closer to, it's a list of objects like we had before, but the users of our API don't need to know about that. So here we can now do map the menu items. I'm wondering, we might even be able to do this better. Let's call this labels. And we can map all the labels to a label and an index. Yeah, I think this will be better. And we can return a selectable menu item that is a key of label is selected. This will be the same. I'll return the label inside. And fingers crossed. Ah, interesting. Is that because Oh, it's because we can return null or undefined. So yeah, let's make sure we have labels. Let's do that. Wow, yeah. This to me is looking a lot nicer. We've extracted that logic out into this separate utility method that's going to extract the labels, or not even a utility method. It's just a we're just mapping the children to labels. If we wanted, we could even get this into a separate function, like get labels, get menu item labels, or something like that. In fact, why don't we? Get menu item labels children, and that'll be good for another reason. So, utility functions are free. Something like that, and we can return this value. First of all, let's save that. Awesome. Oops. If we wanted, we could just kind of stick this directly in, but I like having it as a separate separate variable like this, especially because if we want to memoize it, etc. Yeah, this is looking good. Okay. I I don't know if anyone out there cares as much about like sort of rethinking design and cleaning things up, but I gotta say I'm just really excited about what we did here today. I think that not only did our menu component improve in terms of the external API, I think that we made it a lot cleaner in terms of like what's actually going on. From a glance, you can really see like, okay, I'm using the menu cursor. I've got some actions I can do with that. I've got the list of labels that I need to render, all this good stuff. And then the render method, is this is really the bulk of it right here. It's pretty simple. You can kind of see maybe what stands out here now is the controller listener is quite bulky. And this is something that I want to think about as well moving forward. I don't know if it's the next thing we'll work on or if we'll do a feature next, but anyways, this is probably a longer video than I was expecting, you were expecting. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really excited about what we did here today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.